Vinnie Politan, thank you for joining us tonight. And this is a trial unlike any trial I've covered in my history here at Court TV. And I begin every segment when I cover it with my disclaimer, because I know I'm going to get the DMs. I know both sides are going to attack me for something I said or didn't say, a question I asked, a question I didn't answer, a piece of video we put on the screen. I have no agenda here but the truth. No agenda but the truth. And we need a trial in this case to figure out the truth. And we're talking about the death of a Boston police officer. John O'Keefe is his name. And that's what this trial is about. It's about what happened to John O'Keefe. Something terrible happened to him. Someone is responsible. Prosecutors believe it's Karen Reed, his girlfriend. They believe that she backed her car into him on purpose, ran him over, drove away, left him to die in the cold. But she says, no, that didn't happen. I was framed. I dropped him off at a party. Some other police officers were there. Something happened. He got beaten up. They dragged him out onto the front lawn, and then they framed me for murder. So those are the two sides. They both have some evidence that seems compelling, and they both have some evidence or some things that you question, which is why you need a trial. You put the witnesses on the stand, you bring in the photos, you bring in the videos, you have cross-examination, and you try to figure out the truth. So, what do we have for you tonight? Tonight, they were back in court today, and we saw for the first time, and this is from her second arrest. So she was arrested initially for manslaughter, right? For recklessly running him over and leaving him in the snow to die. Well, then she got indicted for murder, so she was rearrested. And we have the body cam video from that rearrest. Let's take a look and a listen.
So, initially, your arrest was on probable cause out of the district court, okay? So the charges that you were arrested on initially were out of district court, out of Stoughton District. That's where the arraignment was. It was district level charges. Today, grand jury indicted you on these charges, which is second-degree murder, vehicular homicide, and leaving the scene of a death, okay? So those are the charges that grand jury indicted you on. So now you're being charged and will be arraigned in Superior Court, Norfolk County Superior Court in Devon. Okay?
So bail doesn't apply anymore?
Typically, I'm not, so we don't set the bail. But typically, once murder comes into play, people don't get bailed out.
So it's not manslaughter anymore, is that the difference?
That's correct. It's a higher degree of taking a life. Okay? So that's the charges that you're being charged with now. And you were indicted by grand jury.
Okay, you're aware he was beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert. I mean, we're all in on the same joke, right? My tail light was cracked and John was pulverized.
Okay, you need to abide by the rights that were afforded to you, okay? So you can talk if you want. If you want to tell us what happened, that's fine. We'll listen, but you were ready to use your rights, okay? And I'm sure he's going to do it again. All right. If you want to talk to us, you want to give us a story, definitely. We'll take it.
No, I mean, I know you already know the story, so I don't need to.
Interesting. She doesn't say a lot. She's behind the computer on the other side of the table. So this is the officer who's processing her, so it's his body camera, but she's right there on the other side of the table. We don't see her in this video, but you're hearing her and what she's saying. So I want to break down what she said a little piece by piece for you here. And begin with the first one, where she says, you're aware he was beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert. So where's the potential evidence of this? Like, where does this come from, right? Because she's not an eyewitness to it. It comes from, first, some blood that is in the snow. And I think the argument from the defense is going to be that the The blood is on top of the snow. How does the blood get on top of the snow? I think this is what they'll argue. How does the blood get on top of the snow if he was run over by the car before the snowstorm started? I think that's part of what they're going to say. And what they've also been talking about are the cuts on John O'Keefe, Officer O'Keefe's arms that they say are not consistent with being hit by a car. They say they're consistent with perhaps being attacked by the dog that the owners of the home have subsequently given away. It's not getting hit by a car. It's being attacked by a dog. These are things we've heard inside the courtroom, but here she is. Before we're really hearing it inside of the courtroom, we're hearing it from Karen Reed herself now making these allegations. Now, prosecutors want this in front of the jury because they say this is inconsistent with other things that she has said, that her story changed over time. Now, something else that she said, we're all in on the same joke, right? And I mean, it was a strange way to say it, but it's said with a little bit of an attitude, I think. But is that how someone who is factually innocent would react in this situation? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that. But she's clearly saying, yeah, come on, we're all in on this. Alan Jackson brought this up in court, and they've made arguments because of one of the investigators' relationships with the Alberts, who she's pointing the finger at in this body cam video. Alan Jackson pointed out that the state trooper, who's the lead investigator in all this, had some level of a relationship with the project, but didn't reveal it. Take a listen.
So obviously, we're asking questions about your relationship with Julie Albert, with Chris Albert, and with Colin Albert. Do you understand that? Answer, yes, sir. Question, and you're saying that you're minimizing, quote, minimizing your relationship to the grand jury, correct? Answer, yes. He finally, under the scrutiny of a federal grand jury, admitted that he had been lying about his relationship to the Alberts, which means he lied to the grand jury, which means that evidence was distorted in front of the grand jury.
And again, reminder that the investigators were or are being investigated by the feds. And we're in front of a federal grand jury, and that's what Alan Jackson is talking about there. Statements from the lead investigator. I mean, does it mean something that he is somehow connected to folks here? Well, the defense thinks it means a lot. Now, the other thing is she said, my taillight was cracked, excuse me, and John was pulverized. The cracked taillight is going to be a big part of this trial, a huge part. Prosecutors say, well, there's like remnants of it on the victim. Like, how do remnants of the cracked taillight get on the victim if she doesn't hit him with a scar? But the defense has some other problems, has some other ways to explain this and some things they're pointing out. For instance, the video that we've looked at tons of times. This is the morning after, as now she's going to try to find John O'Keefe. She backs her car up into John O'Keefe's car. Did she crack that back right tail light at that point? Is that when it was cracked, or did she crack it when she ran him over? And the defense is alleging that pieces of the tail light are being planted, that evidence is literally being planted. One thing they're looking at is the local police chief. This is about a week after John O'Keefe's death. The police chief said, I was working the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift as the detective sergeant. I was advised Chief Berkowitz was at 34 Fairview Road and had possibly discovered more evidence. He directed our attention to the area where O'Keefe had been discovered. I was able to observe a red broken piece of hard plastic, which appeared to have been broken off a motor vehicle light fixture. The temperature overnight had reached 45 degrees with heavy rains, which melted much of the snow from the storm on Saturday. This revealed much more of the area. So prosecutors are saying the rain comes down, it gets warm, and now the snow is gone, and now we found more of the tail light. The defense is saying, why is the chief just happened to be driving by and happened to find that piece of evidence? Because again, they're alleging this huge police cover-up. The final part of one of the statements that she made in this body cam from her arrest was, "I know you already know the story." And again, she's saying this is what she believes is a police cover-up and frame job of her. Let's take a listen now to some of the arguments today about getting this video in front of the jury. First, we'll hear from the prosecutor.
Over Miranda and advised her to stop making statements, and repeatedly states that to her during the course of her making statements. But the sum and substance of it is she says something to the effect of, you know, are you in on the joke? And then makes some sort of reference to having witnessed Brian Albert and Colin Albert essentially smash John O'Keefe's head into the taillight, indicating that that's how her taillight was broken. Doesn't make any sort of further statements about why she would then leave the scene after that occurred or anything like that. But these are, again, different accounts that have been made in direct variance to prior statements that she made.
So here you see where the prosecution is going. Like, she's telling different stories at different times. We've seen this in other cases. Why do people tell different stories at different times? The truth is the truth. Why would the story ever change? And it's a very effective way to go after a defendant. Very effective way. Now, let's take a listen to the defense response.
We object. After John O'Keefe was found dead on the lawn of Brian Albert's home, I immediately got a letter out to the state police saying, I represent her, I will surrender her, no need to arrest her, just call me and I'll bring her in. They ignored that, and they arrested her to get her into custody. I would assert, ultimately, to make the arguments that Mr. Lally's making today. Then, astonishingly to me, after the grand jury issued indictments, based on basically no new evidence, they upcharged her and once again did not contact me, despite the fact that she was completely in compliance with the terms of her release and had made every court appearance. They arrested her again.
All right, let me bring in my special guest and actually bring her back in. Joining us in Orlando, Florida, human behavior expert, jury consultant, Susan Constantine. Susan, thanks so much. First, I want to begin with the statements that she's making. And I understand she had been arrested previously, lesser charge, gets rearrested, and then starts making these statements like, you're aware, when she's told she's been charged with the murder, you're aware he's beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert. What'd you think of the tone and the nature of these statements she was making at this moment?
Challenging, and she's aloof. But that doesn't mean that she's not truthful. So during break, what I did, Vinny, is I took all those statements and I ran it through Deceptio AI, which is a phenomenal program in detecting deception to create a nice baseline. And guess what? Drum roll, 100% truthful.
Wow.
100%. Not one word was out of character. So the language that she was using, when you analyze it, with scrutiny, with each word and the order in which she speaks it, take away the voice, just the words, came up 100% truthful. Now, if she believes what occurred, her tonality and her voice and her body language will all mirror that. And what we're seeing is she's very combative, she's very aloof, she can sometimes come across smug, and she's standing her ground. So would an innocent person do that? The question is yes. She's challenging, which is she's not taking the other approach as the victim. She's coming at him like a bull. So just at the first view of this, without going through all of the other statements and then reading them and then analyzing them and then comparing them, just those questions are those that she said, those statements were 100% truthful.
Now, Susan, you reminded me of something when I was a prosecutor. There was one person who I was convinced was innocent. There was a grainy, this is way back when, so the video was grainy, obviously. and it was of someone stealing something. And the person who was accused came into the prosecutor's office to view the video with his attorney. And they showed him, they said, you know, because the prosecutor, I wasn't handling this case, someone else was, but I was right there watching it. And the defendant looked at the video and said, that's not me. That's not me. And I could tell that he was convinced it was not him, like he knows what he looks, and was screaming at the top of his lungs, yelling at the prosecutor, and stormed out of the office, and his lawyer was left behind. I could not believe what I had just seen, but it stuck in my mind all these years, the defiance and like going after the prosecutor because you have wrongfully accused me of something. That's not me in the video. And what I just heard you describe is to a lesser degree what you're noticing, because she's not blowing up at that moment, but is what you're noticing from this body cam video.
Yeah, and you know, we've both been in the courtroom, worked on many, many cases, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had another case where there was a police officer who was actually on the jury. And in fact, one of the attorneys said, I don't want him on the jury. I said, no, I want him on the jury. He's saying everything right. He's totally in sync with what I'm looking for. And at the end of the trial, he looked over when he was found not guilty. He smiled at the defendant. So the point is that it's really easy to make these assumptions because somebody's angry or they may look like the bad guy or whatever, and they could be completely innocent. You know, if there's a great Netflix movie that just came out, which was The American Nightmare. If you would have watched the very beginning of that, you would have thought for sure he was guilty.
Don't give away the ending. Don't give away the ending. I'm going to watch it now this weekend.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Susan, we're out of time for tonight. Thank you so much for staying into the second hour with us. Really appreciate your insight. Great to see you. Have a wonderful weekend. Susan Constantine, folks. All right, when we come back, we'll bring in our think tank, Ben Chu, Bernardo Villalona, Philip Dubé. Can Karen Read sell it at trial? They'll let us know when we return.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Read is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Read claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The killer or cover-up murder trial. Live coverage begins next week, only on Court TV.
And you were indicted by grand jury.
Okay, you're aware he was beaten up by Brian Colin Albert. I mean, we're all in on the same joke, right? My tail light was cracked and junk was pulverized.
Karen Read, the day she was arrested for murder, she was already out on bond for manslaughter. Then they put it in front of the grand jury, up the charges. She gets rearrested, and she's like, had enough. And there you hear her speaking with one of the arresting officers. A big day inside the courtroom as they get ready for next week when this trial begins with jury selection. Here's a look at all the big moments.
Now that it's time to actually try the case in the courtroom, I don't have a motion from the defense to admit third-party culprit. And as you're well aware, I have to make findings before any mention of any third-party culprit evidence or even an opening goes before the jurors. Given that I have no information at all, I mean, I don't know who the third-party culprit is, even after reading 4,500 pages of discovery. I don't know what motive a third-party culprit might have. I don't know how it's relevant. I don't know if it's remote or if it's current. I don't know if it's speculative or if it's relevant. I don't know if it will prejudice or confuse the jury. And if it's hearsay, I have a whole other series of factors I have to consider. So, Ms. Giannetti, are you pursuing a third-party culprit defense?
We are, Your Honor, and I'm prepared to address that.
So who is the third-party culprit?
We are under no obligation to name any specific third-party culprit.
The Commonwealth seeks to admit irrelevant, inadmissible, and prejudicial prior bad character and propensity evidence against Ms. Reed by admitting inflammatory evidence of an event that purportedly transpired in Aruba on December 31st, 2021. The Commonwealth has put forth no reliable evidence to suggest that the incident that occurred in Aruba on New Year's Eve has anything whatsoever to do with O'Keefe's death, or that this remote and isolated incident was even a point of contention in their relationship at the time in question.
These are not isolated statements. These are not just one time 4 weeks prior. It's not too remote in time, and it does show sort of the nature of the relationship and as it's evolving over the course of that month, from the date of the incident in Aruba all the way through until the date that Mr. O'Keefe is killed. So for those reasons, the Commonwealth would submit that it is relevant as to motive, it is relevant as to absence of accident, and it is relevant as to absence of mistake.
If he was not hit by a car, as both our expert and FBI confirmed, then he was attacked. And if he was not hit by a car, then there is a third-party culprit or culprits. You know, it is not our job to solve this case for the prosecution. It's our contention. They had the opportunity to do that, but they failed. Starting with Brian Higgins. He was present at 34 Fairview Road on January 28th to 29th. He was close friends with the homeowner, Brian Albert. He had a prior romantic interest in Karen Reed. In short, he was present that night, he had a motive, and there is plenty of consciousness of guilt cover-up evidence with regard to Mr. Higgins. We have evidence of bad blood between Colin Albert and John O'Keefe.
And what you can see within that cruiser camera video at 8:22 in the morning is the damage to the right rear taillight of the defendant's vehicle.
What a day. Both sides just going at it. And you look at that courtroom is packed every time. The trial hasn't even started. Pre-trial motions, standing room only in Dedham, Massachusetts. Let's bring back in, or let's introduce our think tank tonight, or should I say pink tank. Joining us in New York City, former senior homicide prosecutor, founder of Villalona Law, Bernarda Villalona. Also with us in Los Angeles, California, Deputy Public Defender for LA County, Philip Dubé. And in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., the attorney who represented Johnny Depp. Oh, yeah, he won the case in that defamation trial. Fellow at the American College of Trial Lawyers, Ben Chu. Great to see everyone. I want to put up on the screen some of these quotes from this arrest video of Karen Reed. First one, you're aware he was beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert. Bernarda Villalona, are they going to be able to sell this? Is she believable when she says it? Do you think that this is someone who may testify as well?
Vinnie, if I were the prosecutor in the case, unless I absolutely need to, I would not open up about these statements, because I will want to see how the case plays out before I make that decision as to whether to introduce these statements to a jury. That way, you can also keep the defense on their toes on whether their client is going to testify or have to testify. But in the very beginning, I wouldn't mention it. But then again, their case is so circumstantial, they may not have a choice but to mention those statements and start arguing that the statements are inconsistent because there's a consciousness of guilt.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Bernarda. I'm always weary as a prosecutor of putting in statements from the defendant because I think she's not telling the truth, but they are self-serving, right? So you can keep them out and force her to get on the witness stand. I mean, that happened in the George Zimmerman trial. He didn't testify, and his whole story was in front of the jury because the prosecutors played a video of him telling his ridiculous story. And it was enough. He didn't have to testify. No cross-examination. Philip Dubé, let me put up another one, where she said on the day she's arrested, we're all in on the same joke, right? Like, and the day she's arrested for this, she is convinced, or at least trying to convince the arresting officer that she knows this was all a cover-up.
Well, that's not what I'm hearing.
What are you hearing?
When she says, when I hear her say we're all in on the same joke, I think what she's saying is, you've got this wrong. You've got the wrong person here. I don't know what you're talking about. The problem is, Vinnie, if they're going to put on a third-party culprit defense, she has already identified through her police statements who she believed the culprits were. And now to leave it sort of vague and amorphous and Delphic and subject to your imagination, it's going to look like you're desperate to try to point the finger at somebody. The third-party culpability jury instruction throughout this country is pretty uniform. In order for you to earn that jury instruction, which, by the way, is sort of a subset of causation, the prosecution has to prove that there's a homicide and that she was the cause of it. When you're putting on third-party evidence, you're trying to show that somebody else was the cause of the death. So her problem right now is that she's just floating the idea that it may be somebody else. But really, when you think about it, it's sort of imaginary, and it's subject to any sort of unreasonable doubt without any specificity. So I think she's in danger of a judge turning her down in getting that jury instruction. There has to be some evidence to corroborate it, rather than just merely having a motive to want to hurt the guy or the opportunity to want to hurt the guy. There has to be something substantial in evidence connecting those two guys or whoever the third-party culprit is to the homicide. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're spitballing the imaginary doubt for purposes of reasonable doubt, and the judge is going to shut it down.
Shut it down to the effect that they can't make the argument, or shut it down that there's not the instruction?
They won't get the instruction. They will not get, we call it SOTI or third-party culpability, because the case law is clear. Not only, can you show a motive and an opportunity, but you have to show substantial corroborating evidence to prove it. Otherwise, you're really misleading the jury with what I called earlier the imaginary doubt.
I've seen defense attorneys mislead the jury once or twice here on Court TV. Not the ones on the show, but the ones in the courtroom. Ben Chu, another thing she said, my taillight was cracked and John was pulverized. This taillight is going to be a big part of this case. The question is, when and how was it cracked? And was it cracked even more by investigators so they could plant evidence? I mean, that's, I think, where the defense is going with all this. Is that could a jury find that to be credible and reasonable?
I think it could. I think she has a Marissa Tomei, My Cousin Vinny kind of sassiness that could appeal to the jury.
That's interesting. Someone else in our meeting mentioned that today, the same name. All right, our Pink Tank is with us the whole night. Up next. Will the suitcase murder trial ever go to trial? Sarah Boone was back in court with yet another attorney, and yes, we have the latest.
911, what is the location of your emergency?
It's Monday, February 24th. There's a crisis at the home of Sarah Boone, prompting her to call 911.
Is this a police or medical? My boyfriend is dead. Okay, send the line for the fire department. Do not hang up.
The fire department takes over the call, and for the next few minutes, officials are obtaining critical details about what happened.
Now, tell me exactly what happened there.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in a suitcase and we were playing, and like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was dead in the suitcase. So I don't know what happened.
Okay, is he hanging from somewhere or what, ma'am?
No, I pulled him out of the suitcase. I tried giving him CPR.
Fire and rescue instruct Boone on how to give chest compressions.
Just keep on pumping. That's all you need to do for me. Keep on pumping his chest for me. I don't need you to stop and talk or anything. I just want you to count out loud for me, okay?
31, 32. Please hurry.
Okay, man, they're getting there as fast as they can, okay?
He's stiff and he's purple.
EMS arrived within minutes and advised Boone that her boyfriend, Jorge Torres, had been down too long and there was nothing more they could do. Boone explained she and Torres were drinking the night before and thought it would be funny if he got inside of a suitcase for a game of hide and seek. The next day, deputies returned and arrested Boone and charged her with second-degree murder in Torres's death. Boone's story about a childhood game gone awry unraveled when investigators say they found video on her cell phone showing Boone taunting and laughing at Torres while he was struggling to get out of the suitcase.
I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you drink on me.
Sarah, I
you.
Can't breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the
When police questioned Boone the next morning, she seemed to have no memory of that happening.
I fell asleep, so I don't know if they suffocated her, if I had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
Boone told investigators she only realized her boyfriend was still in the suitcase when she woke up. Still, investigators say her actions add up to murder. Sarah Boone has pleaded not guilty and maintains her innocence.
It's been 4 years, she's been locked up for 4 years waiting for her trial, and today attorney number 7 was inside the courtroom. Take a listen.
I obviously am not going to be ready for trial in May. We had discussed that on the day of the appointment. I've got depositions set on May 7th, and there are likely to be pretrial motions that will need to be filed. The state was asking that the status hearing be in 60 days. At that time, I think we'll be closer to being able to inform the court what we believe will be a trial date that we'd be ready for. I've hired an expert, and a number of things are dependent on completion of her evaluation and where we're going to go from there in the case.
Her evaluation. Next hearing's coming up June 7th. But again, don't hold your breath for the trial. I mean, attorney number 7, 4 years. I can't tell you how many trial dates there have been. Let's bring back in our think tank, Bernardo Villalona, Philip Dubé, Ben Chu. Philip, how long can someone be in prison or in jail waiting for a trial? This is 4 years now, and from what you just said, it doesn't sound like they're very close.
It's a great question. There are statutory and constitutional rights to a speedy trial in criminal law. Constitutionally, it's found in the 6th Amendment, and obviously the state of Florida has a provision in its own state constitution.
What does, let me ask you though, what does the 6th Amendment say about the 7th attorney?
No, what it basically says, no, that's a great question, okay? Obviously, everything is subject to a good cause continuance. If there are conflicts of interest, if counsel is ill, if the client gets ill, if courts are congested, there's always grounds to find good cause, okay? And by the way, the number 8 in numerology stands for infinity. So I hope to goodness that, this goes forward with attorney number 7, because if they make it to 8, it really could languish in perpetuity. Listen, at the end of the day, somebody needs to rein her in. And believe me, if I were her lawyer, I would sit her down and I would say, look, I'm ready to go. You can be with me or without me, but I am announcing ready. If we're all honest, Bernardo, back me. This is actually not a complicated case.
No, it seems.
The real issue is,
not at all.
Right?
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
Ben, have you ever had a complicated client like this? You have to name names, but just in representing people, some are just more difficult than others.
Yeah, I've had some complicated clients, but I think Philip and Bernardo are right. You have to put your foot down.
Yeah.
Bernardo, if you had to sit in the room with Sarah Boone, what would you say? If she wanted to hire you and wanted you to be the one?
Well, one, I want my money up front. secondly, what I will say to her are things that I can't say on live TV, Vinnie, because I will keep it real. If I'm going to represent you, I'm going to keep it real. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to litigate this case in your best interest. So you're going to listen to me and follow my lead.
Ben, how important do you think it is for the jury to understand how George got into the suitcase? Whether he was got voluntarily into the suitcase, whether he could have zipped himself shut, whether he could have unzipped himself. Do you think that's a big part of the case, or the fact that she is just taunting him while he obviously needs help is enough?
Vinnie, I think it's crucial to the defense that she somehow established that he was in on it and it was just a game gone awry. But the taunting is just awful.
Yeah.
And very hard to overcome.
And I still don't understand how that's hide and seek. When it's hide and seek, you don't know where the person is hiding. You don't. No. I've played it many times. All right. Think Tank staying with us. Up next.
In tonight's Tank Takes, a Florida woman is suspected of DUI as she drives down the road in her car with only 3 tires. And she says she had no idea. Come on, is she kidding me?
There was pounding on the door. Bang, bang, bang.
He said that we'd seen his face and there was no way that he could ever let us go.
I survived because I'm a born fighter.
I Survived. Next on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time for our Tank Takes, where we take a look at the world of crime and justice and some stories that we save for the end because they're that good. Still with us in our pink tank tonight, Bernardo Villalona, Philip Dubé, and yes, Ben Chu is with us. All right, you guys ready?
Ready.
Ready.
And Vinnie has on a pink tie.
There you go. Look at that.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
All right, first one. I'm calling this
I don't know why.
Bird Song. Bird Song. A local bird was hanging outside of the police station in the UK and apparently began mimicking the sounds of the sirens from the cruisers. And it took them a while to figure it all out. So what I'm going to do for you right now is I'm going to play 2 sounds, and you have to figure out which one's the bird and which one's the siren. Let's listen to the first one. Now let's listen to the second one. Bernardo, which is the bird, number 1 or number 2?
I hope it's number 1 because number 1 sounds like the batteries are dying from a car alarm.
That's what they thought. They thought there was a faulty siren. Philip Dubé, do you concur?
I think it's number 1. I mean, if it was in a uniform with mace, cuffs, and a cudgel, it could be a bobby.
Give me the bird, Ben Chu. Which one? 1 or 2?
Number 1.
Number 1. You all are correct. But they did. Oh. Bernardo, you were right. They thought that one of their cruisers had a problem with the battery, was driving them nuts. Unbelievable. All right. Next story takes us, of course, to the great state of Florida for some three-wheeling. Woman's driving down the road, and she's only got 3 tires. But she may have had a few drinks, gets pulled over, suspected of DUI. And before she blew, there she is, a .16 BAC. She said that she hadn't even realized that she only had 3 tires. Philip Dubé, is she kidding me?
Oh, no, listen, she was blotto. She was 3 sheets to the wind. And by the way, it must be a slow day in Pinellas County if this is all they have to report on. Really? That old lady, DUI? Come on, there's got to be more important stuff to put in your crime blog.
I don't think she was that old, but Ben Chu, 3-wheeling down in Florida.
It's clearly a case of a beer getting caught in the headlights.
Bernarda.
Maybe she thought she was riding a tricycle or a dirt bike or an ATV.
Yeah, just thank goodness no one got hurt.
Yeah.
Except that wheel is done. All right. final story tonight, alpaca my bags. We go back to the UK, a lot of crime in the UK. A band of alpacas escaped from a nearby farm and took over a local highway. They had to respond. Look at this. This is just chaos. Absolute chaos in the UK with all these alpacas. Oh. But it reminds me of a time not long ago when I ran into some alpacas. I think we were all in Fairfax County, Virginia. Oh my goodness. There are the alpacas outside the Johnny Depp trial. Is that Ben Chew? Is that Ben Chew with the alpacas? So here's my question. Oh, and he's got one on his lapel tonight. Ben, which alpacas, who's cuter? The UK alpacas or the Johnny alpacas?
The Johnny alpacas, and hopefully the return of these alpacas will signal the return of the world's favorite pirate to the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
Do we think that's going to happen, or are you breaking news tonight?
Oh, no, I'm just hoping.
Just hoping. Who's cuter? Who's cuter, Philip?
Oh, I don't know. I think I like the Johnny Depp ones. Look at them. You know, they've been alongside man for over 6,000 years. They can be man's best friend, just like canines. These are tame, loving. They don't like to cuddle, though, and they don't bite, at least, so they don't kick. So, but yes, the Johnny Depp ones are for me.
Bernarda, any alpacas in New York City tonight? Do we know?
No, but all I'm saying is that I need those alpacas to get off of the road since I'm running the London Marathon next Sunday. So
good luck.
Clear for us runners.
Good luck. Go get them. Yeah. Bernarda Villalona running another marathon. Everyone you run is one more than I'm ever going to run. Thank you so much. Bernarda Villalona, Philip Dubé, Ben Chew. Have a great weekend. Appreciate your valuable time. All right, folks, before we go tonight, we have a missing child. There she is. On the screen. Charlie Carter. If you see Charlie, please pick up the phone, make the call, 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Beaumont Police Department in Beaumont, Texas. The number is on the screen. Let's see if we can get Charlie to a safe place tonight. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.